we go. Jake and Josh are here to analyze the game they love for the team they love. This is another Dolphins podcast. Here's your host, Jake Mendel and Josh Houtz.
Welcome to another edition of another Dolphins podcast. The Miami Dolphins are looking to bounce back after last week's struggling match against the Buffalo Bills, but we have some breaking news to get into before we talk about the New York Giants and the Miami Dolphins this weekend at Hard Rock Stadium. Before I get into all this information to talk about, though, Joshua Houtz, come save this intro for me, my friend.
Probably still better than I would have done. But yeah, man, we have some breaking news to discuss. It's Friday. I had an early dismissal at school. Is that what you call it? I know you were really upset calling me a boomer for that, but I'm doing good, man. You want to jump into this news or do you want me to bring it up? Because it's I don't know if this is how we thought we were going to spend our Friday doing this podcast, talking about a Chase Claypool trade. What about you?
So the New England Patriots made a trade earlier this week, and they traded a late round pick. It was a late round pick swap for J.C. Jackson, right? And the Patriots did that because they need a starting cornerback. They did a late round pick swap for a starting quarterback. It was announced on Friday that the Miami Dolphins were involved in a late round pick swap. It was not for a starter, was not a starting center, not a starting linebacker. However, Joshua, the Miami Dolphins thought we should bring in Chase Claypool. That's what this team needs, is a Chase Claypool. So, Josh, what on earth do you have to say about that?
Yeah, so the Bears, they just last year or whatever gave up a second round pick for Chase Claypool. Now they just gave up Chase Claypool in a 2025 seventh round pick in exchange for a 2025 sixth round pick. So the Dolphins pretty much did not give up anything. And we just kind of talked about this throughout the last few pods about needing that bigger target. I kind of even think I joked and threw Chase Claypool's name out there, but this is a guy who, at one time, a lot of people thought he was promising, right? And to think about what's going on right now with the Dolphins receiving corps, and it feels like every year, we come in thinking highly of the cornerback room, the receivers. We don't need anybody at those positions. Then they start to fall. I mean, I think this says a lot about Eric Ezukoma's injury and, how long he could be out, and then River Craycraft as well. So the Dolphins saw an opportunity to, bring in a talented young player who, let's be honest, is probably on his last leg with any NFL team based on some of the reports out of Chicago. So he wants it bad. The Dolphins saw an opportunity to go out there and get him. And I'm intrigued by it for sure. But I never thought we'd be coming on here talking about Chase Claypool, before the Giants game.
Definitely a low risk, high reward type move too for this Dolphins team. River Craycraft, he's also on IR, something to keep in mind too. And there's just a lot to like about going for a player like Chase Claypool. He's about to enter free agency. He's only counting $2 million against the cap, and none of that's guaranteed, I believe. And you said it, Josh. You hit the nail on the head. This is someone who has something to prove in the NFL. So far this year, he has 4 receptions on 14 targets for 51 yards and a touchdown. And there's a lot of people out there like, we don't need someone who's going to cause problems in the locker room or, have these outbursts to the media, because one of the things that happened with Chase Claypool is he was a little bit frustrated. He wasn't getting any extra targets or different things like that. All of a sudden, he's not getting any targets at all. He's not even active. I think it was 2 straight games he wasn't active. So the Dolphins thought, all right, let's bring him in. And 2, Josh, something to keep in mind. What did people say about Robbie Chosen when he first joined the Dolphins? Wasn't he supposed to be a little bit of a headache? I think things are a little bit different when you have a Tyreek Hill and a Jalen Waddle as your 1A, 1B. And you see, what Robbie Chosen do when he was able to get on the field, right? He caught a 60-yard touchdown bomb, which probably is going to keep him on some team's practice squad for another 2 years at least. Who knows? He could even bounce back more than that. So there are opportunities in the Dolphins offense, and I think Chase Claypool knows that.
Yeah, man. Not to get too nerdy and throw out stats there, but through his first 2 seasons with the Steelers, 121 receptions, 1,733 yards, 11 touchdowns, had some rushing attempts, and then he went to Chicago and only had 18 catches and 1 touchdown. So which Chase Claypool are we getting here? But I think you're right, man. I mean, if he can go to any team and turn it around, it has to be an offense like Mike McDaniels, with a receivers coach like Wes Welker, learning from Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill. He's still a young player. So it is worth noting again, like you said, he will be a free agent at the end of this year. So say he does ball out. I mean, maybe the Dolphins, can you get a conditional pick if he balls out and leaves? I mean, I don't know exactly how that works, but this is a guy who they had an opportunity to go out there and get somebody who does something different than these other guys. Yes, he's fast, but again, he's 6'4", man. So definitely intrigued. And I thought it was funny. There was a quote from Chase Claypool when he was asked about being in Chicago, and he's like, obviously there are other places you can say, oh, I want to be on the best offense with the highest passing yards, but that doesn't happen in football. You just have to make do with what you got. And I think like a week later now he's traded to the Dolphins, highest passing offense and all that good stuff. So intrigued to see how quickly he picks up this offense, because as we know, it is an offense that takes time. And I mean, Eric Ezukanma was redshirt the entire year because he couldn't pick it up. So how devoted is Chase Claypool, and what type of role can they forge for him? But Mike McDaniel's probably licking his chops a little bit.
I don't want to instantly like point my eyes at like the shiniest, flashiest opportunity possible, but everybody knows about that 4-touchdown performance Chase Claypool had his rookie season against the Philadelphia Eagles. And it was kind of funny because at first I saw a 3-touchdown performance and I was like, 3 touchdowns, yes, it's a great game, but I thought it was like a little higher up. I think he actually made some photoshops about it. And then I realized his 4th touchdown was a rushing touchdown. That's the one I missed. And all of a sudden, man, the gears started going. I'm like, oh no, is this gonna be someone who can fill in for Eric Ezukanma when he's coming until he comes back from this neck injury? The gears started going, and then Josh, you look at these stats: 62 of 109. I don't think he's gonna get 109 targets, but 873 yards, 9 touchdowns, a 3-touchdown game. I think this is a fun red zone target that the Dolphins are gonna have. Something they've really been lacking.
Yeah, weren't we talking about Mac Hollins too, jokingly? I mean,
Yes.
this is that big body now, so it'll be interesting to see the way they utilize him, and how quickly again he can get out on the field. Because, like you said, man, this could be just as simple as run that end around like Eric Ezukanma did, and give him a couple touches throughout the week. And I don't know if you saw it, man, but Tyreek Hill was tweeting out he was kind of stoked about it. It seems like the Dolphins locker room is going to be welcoming him. But if for some reason this does snowball, I know a lot of people, everyone wants to say he's a cancer. Isaiah Wilson was a cancer too, right? And they snapped their fingers and got rid of him pretty quickly. So the Dolphins don't owe anything to keep Chase Claypool around. But I also think Omar Kelly said there might be an injury to Braxton Berrios too to watch. So, we could use him, and now's the right time, right? Get him acclimated to this offense now. So when we're trying to do this thing late in the season, maybe Chase Claypool can make a difference.
Josh, we're both 2 really positive Dolphins fans. We like to get hyped up about
Always.
players.
Yeah,
Robbie Chosen, Homer.
Asking me to get hyped up about a mid receiver. I mean, this is my kind of.
If this is a receiver that's a 70 in Madden, there's no doubt that Josh is going to absolutely love him. But hey, thinking about that Buffalo Bills game, 1, it was weird because Braxton Berrios led the team in targets, but 2, Robbie Chosen got targeted once in coverage, Josh. And what happened on that play? The pass sailed a little bit and it ended up in an interception. And, there can be an argument to be made that Tua could have thrown the ball a little lower. There could be an argument made that he shouldn't have he shouldn't have thrown the ball at all. However, things would have looked so much differently if Robbie Chosen was a player who is known for going up and catching the ball at the high point, the Mike Gesicki, the Devontae Parker. Chase Claypool is someone that can do that, where when you see the safety deep and you are still in front of your cornerback like that and kind of sandwich between them, you can throw that ball up there as that jump opportunity. We saw it happen with Raheem Mostert, and he actually made the play last week. But that's where I see this happening. I'm not trying to hate on Robbie Chosen, but I think Chase Claypool has a little bit more flexibility, and just being able to go up and high point the ball can be such a difference maker when, defenses are playing you to really force the ball into those tighter windows.
Yeah, and let's be honest, Tua has already shown before that he can make those throws. I mean, there's a couple fades that he threw. I mean, he can hit Tyreek Hill, in a window. So it'll be interesting again to see how it all works out and to see how devoted Chase Claypool was. And I do think I don't have the exact quote in front of me. I do have a bunch of quotes or a few quotes, but the one that's really stuck out was, Mike McDaniel was asked, I guess, about the reputation that Claypool had throughout the league. And he's like, I'm a guy that wants to see it to believe it, or something like that. Everyone kind of has a clean slate. I can hear that he's this guy and that guy, but I want to see it for myself. So again, it's going to be up to Chase Claypool which version we're going to get of him, but he's hanging on by a thread, and you would hope that he wants to go out there and do the best in an offense that he could only have dreamed of he'd be in a couple weeks ago.
And it's kind of refreshing too, just to reflect for a minute. I mean, we're so used to having the Dolphins need these veteran receivers to come in and be productive. The scenarios I look at are Chad Johnson. The Dolphins really would have loved for him to come in and be good. There was another player. I just had it at the tip of my tongue. But I guess what I'm trying to get at is the Dolphins are in such a great scenario where they don't need to this isn't a desperate move, right? This is an opportunity for him to come in and make plays. But in reality, the Dolphins already have one of the best passing offenses in the league. So it's just a little refreshing that we kind of get to be in a situation where players can come in and prove it. And you're not just sitting there begging, like, please look at Achane, be that guy we need on the outside or whatever, random free agent receiver you want to bring in. It's nice knowing that, hey, we can make sure that they have time to adjust to our system instead of throwing them right into the fire as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember what year it was, but I think it's probably going to be a lot like that time Randy Moss went to the New England Patriots, right? This is pretty much that type of
Oh,
move.
of course. Yeah.
This is our Randy Moss for sure.
Mapletron.
Yeah. Well, how many 20 plus touchdowns? So that's what we're expecting out of Chase Claypool. But in all seriousness, it's nice to see the Dolphins right throwing these darts and trying to take a flyer on these guys who other teams in the years past might do that and they'll end up having success.
To switch it just a little bit, we have some more injury news for the Miami Dolphins, and that is that Teron Armstead, starting left tackle, is going to be placed on injured reserve. He got rolled up during the Buffalo Bills game, was forced to leave about a third of the way through the game. So Teron Armstead ended up playing a game and a third before suffering the injury that is going to keep him out at least 4 weeks. According to Cameron Wolf of NFL Network, Mike McDaniel is expecting it to be closer to that 4-week mark, which if you start kind of doing a little bit of math, a little bit of research, that puts you in Germany against the Kansas City Chiefs. And two, with that, I don't know if you'd activate Teron Armstead just to go over to Germany and then have a bye week. But Josh, this isn't really too unexpected. It's very disappointed. We see that you can have a conga line out in the end zone when you have someone like Teron Armstead with you. But yeah, it seems like the Dolphins are going to be relying on Kendall Lamb for a little while longer.
Yeah, and I mean, he looked solid, right, when given the opportunity, but this is not what you wanted. I mean, at the beginning of the year, you could have asked us who would be that domino to fall that could ripple this entire season. Two would have been one, and then I probably would have said Teron Armstead number two, but maybe we're starting to see it could be Connor Williams as well. So you hope Kendall Lamb can continue to play at that high level that he was playing at. But this is not what you want from that guy that you gave X amount of money to. Has really not played a healthy season. I mean, I think I've written down he only played one 15-game season in his 11-year career. So, I mean, we knew what we were getting when we signed him. We knew throughout the year we were going to be missing Teron Armstead. So, I guess I'd rather it happen now and hopefully get him back, the same time with Jalen Ramsey and some of these other guys, right? And hope to ride this wave. But it just sucks because your offensive line is so much different with the Teron Armstead in there, but you just can't. I feel like even next year, can you go in there feeling confident that you have a guy at left tackle? And then what do? I think you already restructured his contract, right? So that's already spread out throughout. I'm spitballing here, but it sucks losing Teron Armstead.
Well, yes, you'd love to have a guy at left tackle, but the Dolphins are in a pretty decent situation where they have a couple guys at left tackle. Kendall Lamb in relief. He has allowed 6 hurries this season. He's not that great of a run blocker, but that's something the Dolphins are going to have to deal with all throughout the offensive line. You consider that this rushing attack just continues to be bananas either way, despite the fact Teron Armstead hasn't played a lot. And Josh, I think that's an awesome point you make where this team has some time to get healthy. They know what they're competing for, right? Every game's important, but they're 11-point favorites. I think that's even grown since I've looked that up over the New York Giants. So you want to be safe with your guys. I think Teron Armstead, there were rumors that he was even trying to beat that 4-week time, but the Miami Dolphins, Mike McDaniel, it seems like he says this quite a bit, and it's certainly understandable that he's keeping it safe with his guys. He'd rather play it long-term and hope that, hey, if we keep him out this extra couple of weeks, maybe he'll be better down the road. Because, Josh, there are also scenarios where you could bounce people back, and it's hard not to see what's happening in Cincinnati with the Bengals, and you wonder if they kind of just shut down Joe Burrow for 2 weeks. You're still losing games to begin the season, and all of a sudden you wonder, hey, if we just shut him down, would he be back? And the outcomes would still be the same. Those are those second-guessing situations you don't, want to get yourself into. So I understand them being safe and holding out Armstead for the extended period of time.
Yeah, I'm good with it too, and I'm sure Armstead would love to be out there, but with the way the schedule's starting to look, I mean, we don't want to say it's an easy schedule right now, but we got some winnable matchups coming up, and I just feel like it is better to do the precautionary thing. And again, they already saw how Kendall Lamb looked, right? I mean, you had to feel pretty confident in that, and knowing that he can step up when called upon. So we'll see, but again, it definitely sucks when you're paying Teron Armstead all that money, and he's proven to be a leader and proven to be the orchestrator of that Congo line, so it's a bummer.
The Miami Dolphins are hoping to get back on track. 3 of their first 4 games were on the road. They are headed back to Hard Rock Stadium this Sunday to welcome in a New York Giants team that is absolutely struggling. Josh, you guide us here. What do you feel? You want to start with offense? You want to start with defense? What's on your mind?
I want to let's start with defense. I mean, is it not the defense that we really want to see step up this week? I mean, I think we had written down that Daniel Jones was sacked a total of 23 times now this year. I think 11 last week. I mean, this is an opportunity for that defense to get right. Andrew Van Ginkel has proven to be, dynamic off the edge, has proven that he can be that guy week in and week out, at least so far throughout 4 weeks. But who else is going to step up? We heard Jalen Phillips, Connor Williams. I know that's the offense side of the line, but I think Mike McDaniel said they're evaluating them later today in practice. So we'll see if they start or if they play. But you just want someone else to step up and to get that pressure on the other side because as we saw last week, if you're not pressuring a quarterback, it doesn't matter who that quarterback is. Even if I would prefer Osmosis Jones over Daniel Jones.
Josh, last week, Josh Allen threw for 320 yards and 4 touchdowns. And I was trying to think of a way that we could compare Daniel Jones to Josh Allen, just the obvious stereotypes we can go with. I was going to say, I mean, discount's pretty generic. I'd even say Daniel Jones, if he buys the battle pass, I don't even think he's still on Josh Allen's level. I can't think of a funny way to describe those two. But what I see here is just a great, massive opportunity for a get-right game. Daniel Jones has been sacked 7 times in a game twice so far this season, including last week against the Seahawks, where he was hit 14 times. Last week, he threw for 203 passing yards, 2 interceptions, including a pick 6. And Josh, I kind of look at this as like a stuff the stat sheet type game. I look at what Khalil Mack did last week with 6 sacks, 2 forced fumbles against the Raiders. This Giants offensive line is missing 3 pieces. And then you don't really want to look at stats too much, but you see this Dolphins defense, Andrew Van Ginkel, 3 sacks. Nobody else has more than 1. This is the type of game where you can really start to balloon those stats quite a bit.
Yeah, and then you put, all that Giant stuff, those self-inflicted wounds, the injuries, how atrocious they've been. Then you got Vic Fangio, wanting to prove that he's worth all that money, right? Wanting to prove that everyone on this defense wants to prove, that heading into this year, the hype was warranted because let's be honest, man, it's been a little bit of a downer. Despite playing a Chargers team that's very good, despite playing a Bills team that's very good, still been underwhelming. So I'm with you, man. I think this is an opportunity to get right. You mentioned the injuries to the defensive line. I mean, and you just look at it top to bottom, it just looks offensive line. Yeah. You just feel like top to bottom, the Dolphins defense can take advantage of this one. So, this is an opportunity to get right. But saying that and hearing it out loud, doesn't that make you just think, oh no, this could be that, trap game, right? Quote unquote.
The doom that's sneaking in. But honestly, Josh, I'm gonna try to hype it up because I've tried to be the doom and gloom type of guy, but it's just so hard not to like this matchup for the Miami Dolphins. Al Michaels during Thursday Night Football, he defined DJ Moore's performance, 3 touchdowns. He went absolute bananas as like a Pro Bowl trip in one game where like you only need that one game to really define a Pro Bowl performance. Obviously, you need to play throughout the whole season, but just that one game that can really just balloon what everyone feels about you. That's what I think can happen against the Giants here. The Dolphins pass rush, just 10 sacks on the season, which is 19th. Going against an offensive line like this, man, it's going to be really hard to talk back a situation where if they don't tee off against Daniel Jones, and there is a situation where Saquon Barkley can come back, but this is a player who's dealing with a high ankle sprain, and then you add in left tackle, left guard, and center all projected to not play on Sunday, man. There are no excuses where you should see a party in the backfield at Daniel Jones.
Yeah, I mean, and you're starting to scare me because now I'm just thinking, oh, that's so Dolphins. I mean, you want to see Bradley Chubb get a sack as well. I think I've written down 43 total points on the year for the Giants. This entire season, 3 points last week against the Seahawks. I mean, this is the opportunity for the Dolphins to just take advantage of it. You do hope, for as dynamic as Saquon Barkley is, if he's out, I mean, that's definitely a game changer there. I guess I'm a little bit worried maybe about Darren Waller. I don't know your thoughts, but I still feel like tight ends can give the Dolphins a little bit of a trouble. And from everything I've read and seen based on this Giants offense, Daniel Jones likes to force feed him. And speaking of Daniel Jones, he does have a little bit of that athleticism to him, right? That Geno Smith, Thad Lewis, all those guys that we got, EJ Manuel that we got run on us a little bit. So we got to watch this. But dude, if the Dolphins don't go up there and just if they don't just lay the wood to this Giants team, I mean, there's no excuses.
Do you know who the Giants backup quarterback is?
No.
It's another one of the
Ryan Fitzpatrick. I'm kidding.
It's another one of the rushing quarterbacks that have torched the Dolphins. Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah, I just looked it up. I forgot I had their depth chart pulled up. Tyrod Taylor. Oh man. What if they have Wildcat packages or something for Tyrod Taylor to to run against us just to cause nightmares.
The dangerous dual quarterback option. Yeah, that would actually scare me. When you're 11-point underdogs, maybe that is something you do try. But Josh, what would it mean to have someone Jalen Phillips return to the lineup? He's missed almost 2 games at this point with back oblique injuries. And you look at Daniel Jones, 6'5", 230. I mean, that's why we were so excited for this defensive line entering the season. These big quarterbacks, Daniel Jones, I even look at Josh Allen. You have these 2 monsters on the edge who can really disrupt the game. What would someone like Jalen Phillips do to this matchup in terms of just the Dolphins defense winning at the line of scrimmage?
First, let me just say I misspoke. I think I said the Dolphins were going up there. The Dolphins are at home this week, so I misspoke there. But I mean, I think you asked me on the last pod what it would mean to get Jalen Phillips back before it was, announced he wasn't going to play. And it just means everything, right? I mean, getting him back healthy when you need that extra pass rush, when, I don't want to say Bradley Chubb isn't getting it done, but, I feel like they have another level that they need to reach. And I feel like Jalen Phillips always brings that high motor. You mentioned how big he is and how disruptive he can be to, Daniel Jones. I think it would mean everything to this defense. And, then you have AVG that you can move around, do different things with. We heard about him playing inside a little bit. Is that a way for you to get him out there as well in some packages? So I would be interested to see it. But again, the one thing that you got to like about Mike McDaniel, to a fault, though, he likes to keep these guys out, for better or worse. So I hope Jalen Phillips is out there this week, but it does sound like everything's going to come down to this Friday practice. But it would mean everything to that defense, man.
And two, just having everyone healthy, it gives us such a good idea of how the coaching staff feels about players. Because I think if Jalen Phillips is healthy, the next domino to fall is David Long Jr. back in the doghouse. The linebackers struggled against the Buffalo Bills. So you put in Jalen Phillips as the edge rusher, and then all of a sudden what you're doing is you're moving Andrew Van Ginkel to the inside, and he actually hasn't been awful in coverage so far this year. I'm not saying he should cover Darren Waller in coverage by any means, but I do wonder if that would be a domino to fall, or if David Long is going to just still be that guy, and Vic Fangio saw some things to like where, hey, the Buffalo Bills, everything was going right. Sometimes, like I said in the recap pod, you get punched in the face and you got to move on.
Yeah, I was going to joke. We just figured out how to stop the Bills, right? You have X line up on Stephon Diggs, and then you have a healthy Jalen Phillips, and then you have AVG at middle linebacker, blitzing and adding that pressure right there. That's how you beat the Bills. That'll be the game plan later in the season. We'll clip this audio.
Easy, Josh. You just summed it up. It's like if you want to stop the Dolphins offense, you just pressure them at the line of scrimmage and you have nothing else to worry about, and then you'll just beat them right there. Last week against the New York Giants, Devon Witherspoon, the fifth overall pick out of Illinois for the Seahawks, had 2 sacks, a pick 6, 3 tackles for a loss. Josh, I think Daniel Jones really struggles when the opposing teams bring extra blitzers, especially out of the secondary. If you had to pick one guy in that Dolphins secondary to be that real disruptive guy, to be in Daniel Jones's head all day, who is it?
I mean, the answer is Javon Holland, right? But I was going to say Brandon Jones. I just don't know that this coaching staff seems to trust him in that way. But, in years past, the Blitz boy would have been the answer. But I'll go Javon Holland. Was that going to be your answer? Who are you going with?
Dude, I completely agree with you. I think back to the Denver game where Javon Holland was all over the field, the 2 forced fumbles. I think when you're not facing a superhuman type offense, I think Javon Holland has opportunities to have these just like really thick stat sheets to really to put him in the conversation as one of the top safeties in the league too.
No, go ahead. I was just raising my hand because I wanted to ask about Deshaun Elliott. Do we know if he's playing? Because that changes everything too, right? That allows them to move Javon Holland around a bit more.
That's a great point. I think he is actually trending in the right direction too. I think he was one too that they were feeling pretty good last week, but they wanted to hold out. I could be 100% wrong about that. But Josh, I think that's a great point either way. If Deshaun Elliott is involved, you might see a lot less Brandon Jones, or you might see him just all of a sudden be that blitzing blitzer on the outside, and who knows, maybe some snaps at linebacker just for a little more physicality and hopefully some quick strike run blocks or something like that. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out some way to get Brandon Jones involved after a tough game last week.
We'll see if Vic Fangio can come up with something. You would hope he could, right?
Oh yeah. But overall, man, I do like this matchup. The Giants have some speed on the outside, but I just don't know how often Daniel Jones is going to be in a situation where he's going to be interested in looking downfield. I think this defense should really pick their game up, and it's going to start with the linebackers. I think this is the game where we do see Jalen Phillips, we see Bradley Chubb really take over. And, middle of the first quarter, early second quarter, the Dolphins have that, 14-point lead, and everyone's kind of like laughing. That's what the expectation should be for this defense, especially after a couple tough outings against good offenses like the Chargers and like the Bills.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to keep saying this isn't the same Dolphins and, you want to be a legit contender in the AFC, in the NFL, we're talking Super Bowl and things like that. You got to be able to take care of business and you got to be able to, bounce back after that dreadful performance last year and, quote unquote, take it to Daniel Jones, the Giants, because there is an opportunity there with or without Barkley or whomever else they might have.
It's so funny, Josh, because you might not believe this, but Tua actually played okay against the Buffalo Bills last week. 282 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. That's like a month of Daniel Jones passing yards right there in one game, and we're saying that's average from Tua. So before we get into the nitty gritty here, just big picture, man. The Dolphins' offense, even when they're bad, they're still kind of scary.
Yeah, I saw someone say that probably would have been like that was Zach Wilson's best career game to his worst game this season, right? And I
Exactly.
I don't know that I really saw so much of the hate. I mean, I guess it was going around on Twitter or X. I try to stay off there as much as I can nowadays at times, but I didn't think it was that bad of a performance. I thought he had that typical Tua interception, right to the guy, but other than that, I mean, he was again looked the part of what you want out of your franchise quarterback. So I think he's going to get back on track this week, right? I mean, there's an opportunity there, just like for the defense, there's an opportunity there for the offense to bounce back after only putting up 20 points last week in a divisional game. Now you got the Giants at home. I mean, this is their opportunity to bounce back, and you want to see Tyreek Hill get more than 5 targets, right? Jalen Waddle more than 5 targets. I know Braxton Berrios looks solid this year, but again, that was one of those things that we had on our list of things we never want to see again. Right after last week was him leading this team in receiving or targets. So I'm excited to see this offense bounce back, but it's going to be a tough task with that defensive line of the Giants.
Would you say you're kind of confident? Because I mean, I would that Braxton Berrios will not lead the team in targets again for the rest of the season. Because I feel pretty confident saying that.
Yeah, I'm good with that. I'll piggyback on that with you.
Not that there's anything wrong with it. I mean, he's a great receiver and he's a good option to have. But something that I want to put on your radar, Josh, Tyreek Hill in both the divisional games so far this year, I wouldn't say struggled, but he has not been nearly as involved as he should be. I look at last week, 5 targets, 3 receptions, 58 yards. The Patriots game, I think he had like 40 yards. Do you have any type of concern about those divisional matchups, or is it just too early? And the Patriots and the Bills, they knew right away, like, hey, if we got to take away anything, it's Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, I think it's probably too early. And I mean, at that point, I mean, New England, they really didn't see that Achane, that dynamic, did they really? I guess that was a little bit after that. So I think it's a little too early to say, but that's just they have all season to game plan for this Miami Dolphins team, right? And I mean, they're probably sitting there staying up late at night, like Wink Martindale's. Did I say his name right? I think I did.
Yep.
Staying up at night, thinking about this offense and what it could do to him. So I'm not too concerned yet, but you definitely want to see him step up in those later divisional games when the Dolphins are going to need it most.
I gotta read you this quote, Josh, because Wink Martindale said it so perfectly, and it's because like the offense has Waddle, or excuse me, has Hill. Devon Achane's blowing up, but Josh, the question remains: where on earth has Jalen Waddle been? I think that's still just the one piece that's missing to make this offense just absolutely horrifying, and that's after saying they scored 70 points in a game.
Yeah, I think they might be slow easing him back into everything, right? He was banged up a little bit, but you keep saying that, and I think I need to tweet out like every time we talk about it on the pod, I should tweet out that where's Waddle Photoshop I did because that's perfect. But yeah, man, he's still hasn't lived up to the hype and the potential that we all thought he had heading into this year, and what he would do in the next step in Mike McDaniel's offense. So yeah, where is Waddle? When's he going to step up, and when does he get show us that speed that's frightening so many defenses?
So the Giants opposing quarterbacks have a 95 rating, which is 21st, and the Giants are also allowing 11.5 yards per completion, which is 25th in the NFL. This is what Wink Martindale had to say about what it's like to try to prepare for this Miami Dolphins offense. He said that his wife called him last night before she went to bed. She said she was worried about me. She said, "Are you getting any sleep?" I said, "Yeah, I'm sleeping like a baby. Every 2 hours, I wake up and cry and go to the bathroom and try to go back and get some more sleep." So I just thought that was really funny. You could see that it's someone who's been in the league for so long who can kind of have a little fun, the lighthearted humor. And you kind of got to approach it that way when you're facing an offense that, like I just said, put up 70 points.
Yeah, that quote was amazing, and it just shows that he's having fun. And to me, it was my first realization that the sleeping like a baby, does that mean a bad thing? Because I always thought it meant like you were like sleeping all nice, and then I thought about it, I was like,
In
wait,
this one, It's like
Okay.
a 2-year-old baby compared to like a
Okay. Well, that's what I was
2-month-old.
gonna say, because I'm like, my kids, yeah, I can see that now. Sleep like a baby all my life. I thought it was a compliment or like it meant something good. And I don't know, my babies haven't really ever slept too well. So, dude, it's keeping everyone up at night. And I don't know that the Giants are gonna have any way to stop it. And later down the road, what are the teams gonna do when they add their Randy Moss and Chase Claypool to this offense?
That's what everyone's asking. And Josh, we haven't even talked about one of the most impressive parts of this team. Well, we mentioned his name, Devon Achane, 300 rushing yards in over a 2-week span. Uh, the Giants are allowing 4.3 yards per carry. How do you see this offense really getting going? Is it going to be the passing attack early to get that lead on the Giants where the defense can pin its ears back? Or do you see the duo of Achane and Raheem Mostert, despite the 2 fumbles last week, and just kind of let them go do their thing? Because, I mean, they've been virtually unstoppable so far.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I wonder how much the defense is going to dictate that, right? Even if they stack the box, obviously Mike McDaniel, and they're going to want to throw on those, the heavier boxes and then the lighter boxes. They'll take advantage of it with the run game. So, yeah, man, I think another thing that we never want to see again either is Achan only having 8 carries, right? I mean, for as good as he's looked, I saw that, and I mean, he's still at over 102 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, I think they'll come into this and they'll want to establish the run game, but again, the biggest battle to me is that offensive line versus their defensive line. Connor Williams sounds like he's playing, so I want to see how that works out. But find a way to get those carries up and don't really abandon the run game. I know Mike McDaniel said after that Bills game, maybe I abandoned the run, and I think he might have again did it a little bit too soon. So feed those guys because they're also playmakers, even though they get overlooked when you have Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill and some of those flashy, speedy receivers.
I think that's probably going to be the tightest matchup of the day, the Miami Dolphins offensive line against that Giants defensive line. Dexter Lawrence, his 90 PFF pass rushing grade ranks third. You also have Leonard Williams there, who's also a stud against the pass. And then you have Kayvon Thibodeau, who has 3 sacks on the season. He had 2 last week against the Seahawks. It's worth noting the Seahawks are playing without both their starting tackles, so they're a little weak on the edge. Josh, does this matchup have you feeling a little queasy, or can you go back and think about the idea that, hey, Tua wasn't sacked in 2 of the first 3 weeks? Or are you leaning more towards, oh my God, Liam Eichenberg led offensive line allowed Tua to get sacked 4 times?
Yeah, I'm closer to Queasy. That's the pessimist Dolphin fan. I mean, we'll always root for them and I'll always predict them to win. But right now, man, I'm feeling queasy about that offensive line. Would love to know whether or not Connor Williams is playing. You got Teron Armstead out for an extended period of time, so that's making me a little queasy. And you just look at it. You didn't even mention I'm going to butcher the name. I even did the pronunciation and all that before. Aziz Ajalari, they're another pass
Beautiful.
rusher. I did nail that. And then Isaiah Simmons, a versatile linebacker that can do a lot of different things. So there are some playmakers on that defensive side, but most notably Dexter Lawrence, Leonard Williams, Thibodeau, like you mentioned. I mean, how does this offensive line go toe to toe with that? Because we saw last week they seemed a little bit in over their head against what the Bills were throwing at them, and this is another very good defensive line. So, yeah, this one's a toss up, and it's gonna be one of it's not. I was gonna say it's gonna be one of lost in the trenches, but I don't know if that's the case, right? I feel like the Dolphins could lose the battle in the trenches, and they should still find a way to win this game by what 3 touchdowns.
Win it in every other aspect of the game. Josh, this is going to be a really silly question, but Kat and I were talking about this yesterday, and he said the one scenario where the Dolphins might run into some trouble, and I'm completely paraphrasing here, but if the Giants come out and they score on the first drive, and the defense after last week kind of gets the tight butt cheeks, in the words of Tyreek Hill, he had a quote saying that earlier this week, which is pretty incredible. So we all are under the impression of you always want to defer to the second half. But could this be a scenario where if you think that the only way the Giants can be really involved here is if they punch you in the mouth early and make you a little nervous? Do you think the Dolphins might want to take the ball to start the game here? And then you have a situation like the Denver Broncos game where the second play of the game, you're in the end zone and all of a sudden there's 9 minutes left in the first quarter and you have the ball back with a 7-point lead.
Yeah, that's fascinating because I agree. I mean, if they come out strong right away, right out the gate, I mean, then we might be facing a Giants team that's determined, which you can't overlook that, right? They're 1-3. Brian DeBole, I
They
mean,
get paid too.
yeah, and he knows the back of Tua's like the back of his hand. Maybe he knows something about that keyhole accuracy and how to defend it. But in all seriousness, I think keeping the ball away from them, that wouldn't be a terrible idea. But you wonder if Mike McDaniel's stuck in his ways where he always defers. If he wins a coin toss, because I don't know about you, Jake, but every time I play Madden, if you win that coin toss, you kick and take the ball after halftime because you get that defensive stop. Things are looking up for sure.
And then, yeah, you score right before the half. You get the ball after halftime. Pat worded it perfectly. 99 out of 100 times, I'm definitely kicking the ball away to the second half. But I think it's more that we just do these pods so much that in this scenario, we just talk about things so much where, hey, let's take the ball. We have a good offense. Why not?
And you might want your defense out there, right? Maybe they want to go out there right away and prove that last week was a fluke. Because, I mean, let's be honest, they got their ass whooped last week.
That's a good point, too. That is a very, very good point. Joshua, before we wrap up here, I got to get a game prediction from you. How you feeling? What's the final score?
All right. I don't know why I had this number in my head, but I was going to write it down earlier because I thought I'd forget, but I actually didn't forget. 34-13 Dolphins. I think they get back on track again. I think this defense has been underperforming. I think the offense wants to get back on track, from what we saw the first few weeks compared to last week. So full team effort. Everyone's back on track, and it is a dominating win, 34-13. What about you, Jake?
I like 37-14, right in that area. I like the idea of 2 field goals over the touchdown where the Giants can move the ball a little bit. I think this Dolphins defense is going to look much better, but I do think there's going to be still some growing pains until you start to see players like Jalen Ramsey come back. Josh, I want to go back. It might sound like a broken record here, and I apologize, but the idea of a stat stuffing game like Khalil Mack against the Raiders, DJ Moore against Washington last night. If you had to look at one guy in this Dolphins offense to be like, oh, wow, like before and after this week, all of a sudden they're involved in the, top 10 receivers or one of the top running backs. I guess we already have the top 3 running backs in the league, so that doesn't really count. But who do you think has that stat stuffing game on the offense?
Can we say Waddle? I mean,
I want to say Waddle so badly, man.
I was going to say, you said it last week, and he still has those 2 touchdowns he owes us. And I feel like, if anybody could have that explosive game where he gets that much, that crazy amount of yardage, 2 or 3 touchdowns, it could be him. I definitely think that's the right answer. So I'll go Jalen Waddle, and it sounds like you would too.
If you were in fantasy, I want to get your thoughts on this because I know you have a lot of Dolphins. In fantasy, are you still comfortable starting Raheem Mostert?
For now, it depends. It depends how my roster looks. So, like, I'm in the league I have him in, that I'm starting him in. It's a little bit dicey, and I need those points. But it's definitely Achane's job to lose. I mean, we all kind of unanimously said he's probably the RB1, right?
I agree with you, but I still think Raheem Mostert's just going to have like at least 15 plays a game, and those 15 plays, I mean, we've seen it. One can just be a 60-yard touchdown out of nowhere. If it was a guillotine league, and we're down to 14 teams right now. Obviously, we lost 4. Would you be fine starting Mostert there? Because at some point, I just need points, right? I don't want goose eggs or like 2 points. I just need that hearty 7-point, like you had soup for lunch just to get you through the day.
Yeah, and it's probably PPR, right? Because I was gonna say, I mean,
those
I feel
downs
like
count. You get points for that.
And that's why I am okay with him still being in my lineup in that league. I said, I mean, I know my roster's a little bit iffy, but yeah, man, I think you're right. If you want consistent points, go for it. But who would be your other option? I mean, that kind of makes it a little easier, but
it'd be like waiver wire, like
okay, yeah. You roll with Mostert for sure.
The idea above anything here is that there might be other it's weird to call Mostert an RB2, but there might be other players on that same level, but they're middle of the pack teams. Like the Dolphins are the best offense, 40 points a game, give or take. Like you need to have every piece of that as possible. There was one more in the guillotine league. You'd be cool starting Tua too? 14 quarterbacks. You think he's going to be one of the top 14 quarterbacks this week?
Yeah. Is that how it works? Yeah. I think he will for sure. Yeah.
I like it. I like it.
That.
All right. That is it. I hope everybody out there is having a wonderful weekend. I hope the weather down in South Florida is a lot nicer than it is up north. Yeah. Thank you all so much for listening to another Dolphins podcast. Go Dolphins. We will talk to you. We will have a game recap following the Giants game. But until then, fins up.
Fins up.